All right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 278. And today, Humble Bundle has done it again, folks. I have made 2 videos like this already. This is going to be my third. I don't know what's going on between Renegade and Humble, but fans are doing really well because of it. A few weeks ago, talked about a Humble Bundle for you to get basically the entirety of the Transformers RPG. And my thought at the time, I don't think I shared it in the video, but my thought at the time was they were probably doing this to drum up interest in the Transformers brand because the new Transformers movie was coming out, which apparently did remarkably poorly in theaters, but both critics and audience loved it. They thought it was a great movie. And my theory for that is Hasbro just fucked up the marketing beyond a reason. And then we got a Power Rangers bundle, which was fantastic. It's still there. You can still pick it up, and it's basically almost the entirety of the Power Rangers tabletop RPG, minus the most recent book. And it's an insanely good deal. Well, today we have another bundle for basically not just a single tabletop RPG. There's actually 3 different TTRPGs that all use the same basic system that are all included in this bundle, and it's still just $18. Now, this is the first non-Essence 20 bundle I've talked about, but currently the bundle itself is called the World of Darkness Month of Darkness 2024 bundle. If anyone doesn't know what World of Darkness is, World of Darkness is the overarching name of a collection of tabletop RPGs that I believe all run either on the same system or on very similar systems now. I don't know. We'll talk about it in a second here. And they started, if I remember correctly, either in the late 80s or early 90s by a company called White Wolf Publishing. And most of the World of Darkness books, in my humble opinion, are relatively niche. Most of the World of Darkness RPGs are relatively niche. What I mean by that is, if I say the phrase Vampire the Masquerade, most people in the tabletop RPG world are aware of that. If they haven't seen it or played it, they are at least aware of the name. However, if I say something like, I have to remember what the actual title is, because I can't remember if there's an alternate or there's a second title to it or not. Give me just the 1 second. That would be the wrong one. There we go. If I say Wraith the Oblivion, most people will go, wasn't there like a movie in like the 90s? No. I mean, yes, there was a movie called The Wraith. But Wraith the Oblivion was one of the lesser known World of Darkness properties where you play a Wraith. The actual complete collection of different World of Darkness things. You had Vampire the Masquerade. You had Werewolf the Apocalypse. You had Hunter the Reckoning, I think is what the original subtitle for it was. Mage the Ascension, Changeling the Dreaming, and Wraith the Oblivion. Each one of these lets you play as a different folklore-inspired character. Vampire the Masquerade, obviously vampires. Werewolf, easy. Changeling, kind of fae-based characters. Mage the Ascension is actually my favorite World of Darkness setting, and it's literally magic is effectively the laws of physics. Like the plot behind Meiji Ascension is the laws of physics only exist because everybody agrees on it. And mages are characters that actually realize that the laws of physics are simply a collective agreement between people that don't realize that they're not real. And so mages have the ability to basically just randomly change the laws of physics. The problem is, if a non-awakened person sees magic going on, sees something happening that disobeys the laws of physics, bad things happen because they can go crazy, and these weird like distortions can happen, and it can break the fabric of reality. So it's a really interesting system. White Wolf in the late 90s was actually referred to by a lot of people as the D&D killer. Because it was by far not only the second most popular RPG on the market, but because at that point second edition had really kind of lost its stride as far as releasing more books and stuff like that, and the tabletop RPG market wasn't flourishing like it is now, but there was a lot of other stuff out there, and White Wolf was just incredibly popular to the point where D&D was actually starting to kind of take notes from White Wolf because it was such a different style of RPG. There was backstabbing and politics. Not like politics like, I invented bands. No, I'm talking about machinations, behind closed door dealings, all of that crazy stuff that we hate in the real world, but makes for an incredibly gripping story. That's what the World of Darkness books just did super well, especially Vampire the Masquerade. Vampire the Masquerade is Mean Girls with fangs. Like that's what it's always been, is just these people with extraordinary powers basically forming cliques and then trying to sabotage each other socially while also being able to murder each other. Like it's a nonsense idea for a vampire-based RPG, but it takes a lot of inspiration from like Anne Rice and things like Interview with a Vampire, not the movie, but like the entire Interview with a Vampire series that really gets into kind of the cultures of vampires in that mythos, stuff like that. Like it was meant to make you feel like you were a part of this secret society where real power didn't come from your strength or your magical abilities. It came from your ability to manipulate others. So, World of Darkness, going into the 2000s, started doing some weird stuff. They rebooted most of their things. Like Vampire the Masquerade turned into Vampire, I can't remember. Basically, each one of the different tabletop RPGs they had came up with a new subtitle, and they changed how the game played. Very kind of similar to the difference between 3rd and 4th edition. And it was received about as well as 3rd edition purists received 4th edition. And then other stuff started happening. White Wolf, in and of themselves, kept doing really, for lack of a better term, horrible things. Like they would print books with racial stereotypes and things like that. Like one of the books they published, I think in like '94. So this was still when White Wolf was on the rise. Was a vampire supplement specifically about Romani vampires. And they called it Vampire the Masquerade, the Gypsies. If you are unaware, the term gypsy is an extremely offensive term for people of Roma descent. And it was used as a slur for an extremely long time. If you've ever seen... like The Hunchback of Notre Dame from the Disney film Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is a brilliant film, But the idea that Frollo had this huge like hate boner for, again, what he referred to as the gypsies was not them trying to like put in racism but use, you know, another group, very similar to kind of how like the X-Men was always meant to be an allegory towards racism and bigotry in general. And so in the, you know, 60s and 70s it was about racism, and then as it moved forward and race relations were not quite the same as they were, they started basically emulating other discriminated against groups. It's one of the big reasons why X-Men started going really, really heavily into the LGBTQ sphere, because it's always been an allegory about bigotry. The thing with the Hunchback of Notre Dame was that wasn't an allegory. That was a real opinion that a lot of people had about the Roma people. So yeah, White Wolf kept doing stupid things like that, and then oh man, the mechanics that they added to the Roma vampires, which are called like the Ravoni or something like that. Like one of the banes of that particular sect of vampires is they were inherently criminal, and they actually had to make saves, or Vampire the Masquerade's version of saving throws, to avoid committing crimes. Which is, again, an horrible, disgusting stereotype of the Roma people that was used to discriminate against them constantly. So White Wolf kept doing bad things over and over again, and then around 2018, they just started posting, like the people that worked at White Wolf just started posting absolutely abhorrent, horrible nonsense. And when I say nonsense, I do not mean, oh, it's just... no, I mean, I would use other words, but I would feel bad for using them just because of how disgusting some of the stuff that they were putting out was. So nonsense is just my kind of overarching term for stuff that I don't really want to describe. And sometimes it's silly nonsense, and in this case, it's most definitely not. So what happened is Paradox Interactive, who had eventually purchased and owned White Wolf Publishing and everything, basically just closed down White Wolf, doesn't exist anymore, and they started selling out the licenses to different companies, specifically Onyx Pact Publishing and Renegade Game Studio. Renegade now publishes not only Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, which is the most recent version of it, but they also publish Werewolf. And I'm going to look it up. Yeah, Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition and Hunter the Reckoning 5th edition. And they are exactly what they sound like. Vampire the Masquerade, you get to play as a vampire. Werewolf the Apocalypse, you get to play as a werewolf. And Hunter the Reckoning, you are not just a vampire hunter, you basically hunt vampires, werewolves, wraiths, and really anything else. Like the Hunter series was basically, well, what if they weren't the good guy? Like in each one of these, it's like vampires. What if vampires were the good guys, or as good as they could be? And in Werewolf, what if werewolves were the good guys? And again, Wraith, what if like undead creatures were the good guys? And Hunter is basically, what if they're all the bad guys and the good guys are just super powerful humans that go and kill them all? It's a really, really cool. It's a really, really cool idea. Right now, Humble Bundle has a World of Darkness bundle, and in it, just like the other bundles they have a $40 bundle that comes with some physical stuff, and then they have a 29 item bundle, which is only $18, and that just contains the PDFs of all these things. The physical stuff, if you get the expensive one, the physical stuff you get is Vampire the Masquerade Rivals, which is, I believe it's a deck building game. They call it an expandable card game for 2 to 4 players, based on the popular role-playing game set in the World of Darkness. Each player assumes the leadership of a coterie of vampires, using them to advance their agenda, claim titles, recruit new vampires, perform... I believe it's a deck building game. If you're not familiar with deck building games, it's basically you start off with a very, very small deck of generic cards, and then as you play them, you build resources to actually buy more cards from like a group pool to increase your deck to allow you to start doing more interesting things. Deck building games are unbelievably fun. They really, really are. When they're done well, they're an absolute blast to play because a lot of them are cooperative, where you're not playing against the other people playing. You are all trying to work together to beat something. I do not know if that's how Vampire the Masquerade Rivals works, but the 3 physical items you get are Vampire the Masquerade Rivals, the Heart of Europe expansion, and Shadows and Shrouds expansion. So if you want what I think is a deck building game, in addition to all this stuff, you can pay an extra $22 for it. However, the real deal is $18 for, I'm going to list off every single title in here. Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition Core Rulebook, that is a core book. Hunter the Reckoning 5th Edition Core Rulebook, another core book. Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th Edition Core Rulebook. So 3 core books for 3 different systems. That's not all. Hunter the Reckoning 5th Edition's Storyteller Toolkit. I'm assuming that's another core book in the style of like a Dungeon Master's Guide. I'm not 100% certain. I have not checked out Hunter the Reckoning 5th Edition. I actually don't own any of the Hunter books. I have the 20th anniversary versions of Changeling, Mage, Vampire, Werewolf, and Wraith. So I'm more familiar with those. The next book, Hunter the Reckoning, Lines Drawn in Blood, Chronicle book, which is an adventure. Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition, Camarilla, that's a source book. So it's not a core book, but it adds more stuff. Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition, source, Anarch, source book, another one. And if anyone is unfamiliar, and I guess we'll do one more, Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition, Sabbat the Black Hand. And I guess Vampire the Masquerade 2nd Inquisition. So the Camarilla is the aristocratic vampires that have basically created the masquerade to protect vampires. But they're very, very much aristocrats. Very classist society. Anarchs are anarchists. They're anarchist vampires that don't like the Camarilla. If I remember correctly, the Sabbat... I thought the Sabbat was like a militaristic thing. People that are more familiar with World of Darkness or Vampire the Masquerade specifically, feel free to explain the Sabbat. My understanding is the Sabbat are an extremely militaristic organization of vampires that tends to oppose the Camarilla, but I'm not 100% certain on that. And then Second Inquisition is basically when the humans figure out that the vampires still exist, they go on an inquisition to try and exterminate them. And so that's a big lore point in Vampire the Masquerade lore. That's not all, folks. After that, you have cults, and all of those are source books. So they're not really... The Second Inquisition is more of a lore book than a source book, but Sabbat, Anarch, and Camarilla are all source books, so they're just additional player options than a lot of lore. That's a thing with World of Darkness books we'll talk about in a second. Cults of the Blood Gods is, I believe, another lore book. And then we have Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition, Chicago by Night, another lore book talking specifically about Chicago. Vampire the Masquerade, Let the Streets Run Red, which is another adventure compendium. It's 4 adventures. The Chicago Folios, I believe, is more adventures. Fall of London is another vampire adventures. Vampire the Masquerade, Forbidden Religions is a lore book. Children of the Blood is a source book that just gives new Bloodlines lore sheets, merits, and flaws. Trails of Ash and Blood is another adventure collection. Then we start getting back into Werewolf. Werewolf the Apocalypse Reclamation is an adventure book. Hunter the Reckoning Cold Case is an adventure book for Hunter the Reckoning. Vampire the Masquerade. This is a fun one. The Primogen's Gambit is another adventure book. Last Dance of the Renaults, another adventure. Hunter the Reckoning, his Last Trick, another adventure for Hunter. Vampire the Masquerade, Taste of the Moon Story, I believe is just an actual story. Oh no, this is another adventure, sorry. Vampire the Masquerade, Auld Sanguine New Year's Eve, another adventure. Vampire the Masquerade, Midnight Kiss, another adventure. Vampire the Masquerade, New Year's Eve, Love Bites, another adventure. And then a bunch of free content that you can get from Renegade anytime you will want. So overall, there is a metric shit ton of Vampire the Masquerade stuff. In addition, there's some Hunter the Reckoning stuff. There's some Werewolf the Apocalypse stuff. So you are getting 3 complete RPGs in here. There's just a shit ton more for Vampire the Masquerade because by far, Vampire the Masquerade has always been the most popular World of Darkness property that has ever existed. But for $18, again, something as simple as the core rulebook PDF. Well, why would you allow me to copy? That would be far too easy. All right, here we go. So the core rulebook right now at Renegade is $25. So just the core rulebook for Vampire the Masquerade would cost you $7 more than this entire thing. And I think the reason that the PDF for the core book is only $25 is it's been out for a while. Whereas Hunter the Reckoning, Hunter the Reckoning is their newest 5th edition thing. And Werewolf the Apocalypse is kind of in the middle there. But all of this stuff is nonsense expensive. And you get it all there. It's really great. Now, the interesting thing, if you are familiar with World of Darkness in general, if you've ever read a World of Darkness core book or source book, the way I describe it to most people is World of Darkness core books are like if you wrote a novel and accidentally spilled some game mechanics on it. If you look at the old Vampire the Masquerade core books, they are written in this weird in-universe narration to the technique, and they don't clearly mark where the lore ends and the game mechanics begin. Whereas if you look at something like D&D 5th edition, it's very easy to see in the 2014 Player's Handbook. It's very easy to see this is lore, this is mechanics. In the 2024, it's very easy to see because there's almost no lore in there. So you don't have to worry about accidentally, mistakenly reading lore. It'll take you an extra 2 seconds. That's not how any of the World of Darkness books have gone. I have tried learning Mage of the Ascension so many times, well enough that I could run it. It's just a nightmare. When Renegade and Onyx Path started publishing it, because I can't remember if it's exclusively Renegade or if Renegade is the publisher and Onyx Path is the designer. It's very confusing. But basically, when they started 5th edition of Vampire the Masquerade, Hunter, and Werewolf, the books now are much more similar to just about any other core book that you're going to find, where they're still very, very lore heavy, but they also make it very, very clear where the mechanics are, so that if you're using it like a textbook to build a character or something akin to that, you can. Whereas the old World of Darkness stuff, you basically had to completely immerse yourself into the lore to be able to do anything in it, which could be extremely difficult for some people to do. So, my personal opinion, the 5th edition books, from a gameplay perspective for new players, are probably the easiest version of Vampire the Masquerade to be able to get into. Not saying they're the best version. There's a lot of argument in the World of Darkness fandom, and specifically in the Vampire the Masquerade fandom, about whether the 5th edition is a great edition or if it is pissing on the graves of all the previous editions. Not going to get into that conversation right now. But the fact that $18 gets you 3 core books, a bunch of additional source books for Vampire, and then a crap ton of adventures for all these things is nonsense. Again, I am not the biggest fan of Vampire the Masquerade, mostly because I myself have had some bad interactions with Vampire the Masquerade in general. And I have known quite a few people in my years of not only working in friendly local game stores running D&D programs and doing the convention circuit. Vampire the Masquerade has always been there. Since it existed, if tabletop RPGs are somewhere, Vampire the Masquerade will have a presence there. Whether it's officially run games or it's just the vampire people are there, doing stuff on their own, they're always there, which is great. I love the fact that there's other tabletop RPGs, but a lot of the interactions that I had with people that exclusively played Vampire the Masquerade, and I make this specific addendum, people that exclusively played Vampire the Masquerade, would not play anything else, or exclusively played World of Darkness games. I have had nothing but bad experiences with those people. They have been abusive. They have been hyper manipulative, very much akin to how vampires are described in Vampire the Masquerade. And as much as you're technically the good guys, you're still bad people. You still prey on living beings to exist. So yeah, I have my own bias against Vampire the Masquerade, and it is based not on the system whatsoever. It's based entirely on the interactions I've had with people that play the system. Doesn't mean that I think the system is bad or anyone that plays it is bad. I have quite a few friends that love Vampire the Masquerade, and I think they're great. It doesn't have the draw for me that it does for other people. Werewolf is just never something I've been into. Hunter looks freaking badass. And I don't know if part of it is the fact that you get to play someone that hunts vampires. And I've already talked about my distaste for Vampire the Masquerade. Or the fact that I'm a massive Castlevania fan and they are vampire hunters. And so Hunter is kind of like modern vampire hunters with guns and other cool shit like that. So yeah, this is not me trying to tell you don't play Vampire the Masquerade. Play it. It's a really amazing, interesting system. And the system that powers Vampire the Masquerade is really cool. They use what's called a dice pool system, which is basically instead of rolling a d20 and then adding a bunch of numbers to it, you will have a set number of dice, and you will roll them, and then you are looking for them to roll a certain number. Sometimes it's above the number, sometimes it's below. I don't know what the specifics of Vampire 5th edition. I believe you have to roll above a certain number. And then you just count the number of successes and failures that you have, and that decides whether you succeed or you fail on it. Dice pool systems, again, have existed for a long time. I actually really like dice pool based games. I think they're really, really fun. So yeah, I'm not saying don't play Vampire the Masquerade. Just don't believe that you're a vampire. I'm going to put that out. Don't believe that you're a vampire. You're not a vampire. Vampires don't exist. They've never existed. They never will exist. They're make-believe. The game itself is cool. And the other games are pretty cool. I've heard middling reviews for Werewolf because, again, it's very different and it makes some changes to the lore from the old Werewolf just to help the mechanics fit into the frame that the 5th edition books do. And I've heard nothing about Hunter. So I don't know about that. But, again, $18, even if they're shitty, game systems, $18 for 3 different game systems is nonsense good. See, I use nonsense in there as well. Sometimes nonsense is good. Sometimes nonsense is bad. Nonsense is just my nonsense word. But yeah, it's so amazing that you get all this stuff for $18. And so I felt like I had to talk about this because, again, this channel is dedicated to tabletop RPGs in general, or I guess focused on. It's not really dedicated, but it focuses primarily on tabletop RPGs, and you really can't go wrong with $18 for so much stuff. Like it's just. I am super excited for the next couple months if Humble keeps doing this stuff with Renegade, because every single time one of these bundles comes out, they're just great. And a lot of these systems, like, again, I actually own I own Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition and the Camarilla and Anarch books. Because I believe I got them through either a Humble bundle or a bundle of holding. And again, as much as I've had bad interactions with Vampire the Masquerade players, I'm still interested in the game system. So I have that. I don't have Werewolf or Hunter. So as long as I have the money for it, I'm probably going to pick up the PDFs. I'm not going to pay the $40 for the deck building game because I have no one to build decks with. But yeah, this is really, really cool. So, interested to hear from you guys. First of all, are there Vampire the Masquerade people in my audience? Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if I'm 100% wrong about the Vampire the Masquerade exclusive people, or confirm my bias. Have you guys met people like that too at Vampire the Masquerade, where they're just really horrible people that use Vampire the Masquerade as an excuse to abuse people? Because 100% I've met those people. And it's not like I've met a person like that. I have met multiple people, probably like half a dozen to a dozen different people at different places that all exclusively played Vampire the Masquerade, and they were just abusive assholes. So maybe I just live in a bad area for Vampire the Masquerade, but I'd be really interested to find out if anyone else has had bad experiences with Vampire the Masquerade players. Not the game, just players. Again, I've had bad experiences with the Pathfinder Society people too. That's not the reason why I hate Pathfinder. It's one of them. But I would not condemn an entire game based on like a dozen bad interactions with players. And again, I know a lot of people that play a lot of different RPGs that happen to also play Vampire the Masquerade. They're wonderful people. So I don't think it's exclusive to abusive assholes, but ugh. Anyway, let me know what you guys' opinion are on Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse. I'd be really interested if there are any classic Werewolf players or classic Hunter the Reckoning players. I'd be really interested in hearing your opinions on the 5th edition books. Because again, I've liked 5th edition Vampire because it's easier to understand. And I don't have to really immerse myself in the lore to be able to figure out the mechanics of the game. But again, because they do that, it does change how the game plays. And I do know that they did do some kind of rewriting of the lore and history in order to get stuff to work. And I know that was really upsetting to some people. So again, if you are classic World of Darkness players, let me know what your opinion of the 5th edition stuff is. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.